The people making Monaco take the mic. I'm Nancy Heslin, and welcome to Monaco Info, the podcast. Our guest today describes himself as a self-motivated, highly driven entrepreneur and philanthropist. His first company used technology to help Ireland's fishing industry, but it was an idea to challenge teenagers to create high-end, wearable fashion from everyday junk that put his next venture on the international stage. The Monaco resident is also CEO of a group of entertainment, media, and technology businesses. Welcome the founder and CEO of Junk Kouture, Troy Armour. Thanks for coming on the Monaco Info podcast.
Great to be here, Nancy.
Yeah,
Great.
I wanted to add also that you have a superpower of punctiliousness, that you have an insane ability to remember little details about people forever.
I do, right? And it actually is scary, right? Because even my parents, I remember things from when I was a child, right? I remember the registration of friends' cars, for example, and I freaked them out. Or I remember one girl in one time I said to her, wish your father a happy birthday this week. And she was like, how do you know it's my dad's birthday? And I go, oh, do you not remember, 4 years ago we were in such a place and, you said, oh, next week we're going out for my dad's birthday. And you went, I didn't say that. And I go, yeah, you did. And I just have this thing that I remember things. It was a great talent at school because I didn't have to study. So I had a mind that just sucked in things that I heard. And I used to describe it as like an audiographic memory. And I could rewind the tape. And so while I mightn't be able to remember it right now, in an hour, I will come to you. And I want to tell you this. Can I tell you this a little story, but a little random story, right?
Yeah.
So I was at this Oscars party last year in LA. And I like fancy sneakers, right? And
as I can see from your silver sneakers today.
So they're yourself, right? But this particular day, I had on gold sneakers. I have these gold ones that I love, right? They're Louboutins. And so the party was over, and I was leaving. And as I was leaving to get the elevator, I spotted this elderly lady across the room. It turns out she's 81, but there was an elderly lady across the room, and she'd also on gold sneakers. So I was going to get the elevator, and I went, you know what? I need to go say to this lady, cool sneakers. So I go over and I tap this lady in the shoulder and I said, I need to say, what cool sneakers you've got. And, like mine, can we do a sneaker selfie? So we take a sneaker selfie. She starts asking me what I do. And then she becomes fascinated. She says, let's sit and talk. So we spend 2 hours talking there and we get into all kinds of things. But somewhere along that 2 hours, I said to her, I've seen those sneakers somewhere before. What brand are they? And she said, no, you haven't. Because they're one pair in the world that was made by Katy Perry for me. There's only one pair in the world, right? And that's strange because I'm sure I've seen these sneakers somewhere before. So that's okay.
But was there something identifiable about them?
There was no brand name on them or anything. It was just
your brain remembering.
Yeah, going, I've seen these sneakers somewhere before. So that's okay. So later on, so we finish up speaking. It's 1 a.m. I head back to my hotel. I get into bed and then the tape rewinds. And I sent her this text message. And her name is Beverly. I said, hi, Beverly. 2 years ago, I was backstage at a concert in Central Park in New York. And I went into the crew quarters to have something to eat. And I said to this lady in there, what cool sneakers you've got. Was that you?
Oh.
And I just got this message back in capital saying, yes, I was there. And I remember going back to my phone to old photos of the backstage area of that gig. And I so zoomed in, there was that lady somewhere. And it was just, it's like it comes back. I don't know how it comes back, but it comes back. So it's like this talent that I have now. It scares people, but it's actually fantastic for remembering details and phone numbers. And
you've just always been that way.
Always been that way. And the same, so like accounting, I do accounting, so I do it in my head, and I used to have an accountant and I had to get rid of him because he used to say to me, will you please slow down? Right? But it was just, so they tested me when I was a kid. I have a really high IQ. So that's the reason, But then that led to another journey for me in school, which was I didn't fit. They didn't know what to do with me. And basically I finished maths very early in school and then they made me redo it again. So I became really bored with school, different things like that.
Well, there's so many questions popping into my head. So it's funny because when I do these podcasts and I talk a little bit to our guests sometimes just beforehand, or I would talk to them the week before, They're always so chatty, and then they come in here and put the headphones on and nothing. And I'm thinking, it's not going to happen with Troy. I'm going to have an hour conversation. But already, just in the shoe story, I'm like, why are you at the Oscar party? And why are you backstage at a concert in Central Park?
I get into weird things. Really
Tell
do.
me. Nobody's listening, so tell me, just
right.
as a secret.
So
How do you do it?
So the Oscar party, I wasn't supposed to be there, right?
That's not the first time you've said that, I'm
No,
sure.
I wasn't supposed to be there. What actually happened was, so the night before, I was at a kind of a sustainability kind of small round table thing where basically it was called Stand on the Chair, something like this, right? And so the goal was at this round table, and one chair was like bigger than the rest. And so you had 1 minute to stand on this chair and say your piece, whatever it was. And so different people was at that. And I have a shyness too, believe it or not, right? And some things, especially in a room where I don't know.
Really?
Yeah, where I don't know everybody, right? So I was kind of holding back, and these people were just beautiful, right? You know, LA.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, I'm kind of out of my depth here. They talk with such eloquence. I don't know if I can do this, you know, whatever. But this one guy got up to speak, and he is one of the creative directors at Nike in the US. And he was talking about the sustainability problem in fashion. And the solution that he had was to find young, sustainable fashion designers, right? And then get them seeded into fashion houses so that sustainability would grow from the inside out.
Mm-hmm.
And so when he came back down off that, I went over to him. I don't know who the guy is, and I do really better in that conversational type thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I went over to him and I said, what if I told you that I had 10,000 of those kids? Those young fashion designers. And he's going, what are you talking about? I said, what if I had 10,000 of those young, sustainable fashion designers, you know, that you're looking for? I have them. And he goes, but how do you have them? And so I took out my phone and started showing pictures, and he's like, oh my God, this is absolutely amazing. This is like, where are these people? And I go, well, they're in 74 different countries. Like, they're all over the world. And so we immediately got talking about that. And then he said to me, are you going to the party tomorrow night? And I said, I'm not. And I understand that it's 100 seats only and they cannot add one more. And he said, but you need to be there. I said, but
This is the Oscar party.
yeah, I don't know anybody at this. I don't know, how do I get that? And he goes, well, I'm on the board of that. Leave it with me, right? So I didn't know, right? So Nancy, I go home. Again, it's the same kind of thing, right? I go home. This is the night before I meet Beverly. And so the next day, I'm in the hotel all day. And I'm like, do I text him, not text him? Because I hear nothing. And I go, I can't just turn up because, you know, people sometimes say
Did
things.
you really want to go? Was it that feeling of like, I've got to get
Of course,
there?
of course. I was like, I really want to go. And it's like, who will I meet in the room and what'll happen, right? And so at 4 p.m., nothing has happened. So I text another girl that was at that event that I knew was a PA, and she was Irish, right? And Irish people would kind of bond and we find a way to find each other. And I said, he said, Christopher said that I could come, and, you know, I don't want to turn up then and be the odd one out, and, you know, there's only 100 seats, and da da da. So she wrote back, says, well, he hasn't told anything to me about it. I was like, okay, it's that type of thing. But I'll ask him. So then 6 o'clock comes, and the thing is at 7, I'm like, oh, it's not happening. But then she calls and she said, you're on.
Wow.
Now, I will tell you this, right? I remember turning up. I can see it right there. Right? And there was a pink carpet. And I just went, there's no way I can walk down that. Like, they were just so stunningly beautiful, right? And I was at my best nines, right? My best nines were not Hollywood best nines. But so sat down, there was 2 tables, 15 each. And so like your John Legend was across from me with his wife, Donatella Versace, Zendaya, right? All these people. And here's this little Irish guy who wasn't supposed to be there in the first place.
Whose seat did you get?
Right? I have no idea whose seat I got, but what, they missed some party.
So what is that party like?
So it was called the Green Carpet Fashion Awards, and it was set up by Colin Firth's, it's his ex-wife now, called Livia Firth. She's an Italian lady who's really into sustainability and fashion, but trying to lead from the top down. So getting Hollywood superstars to dress sustainably and bring that onto the green carpet. So you do see it now in Cannes. They're doing more vintage. So, for example, Natalie Portman's a big advocate for that. And so all the dresses she's wearing, you'll find out, like she had a Dior dress on at one of the Cannes nights. It's from 20 or 30 or 40, 50 years ago, bringing old-fashioned back rather than going out and buying something new to use one time. So that has started with Olivia Firth. And then that night, the other thing about that room was it was 90% female. And it's a big movement in that. And I remember, because one of the other rooms I was in one night was with Jeff Bezos, and Mina Mohammed, right? It's this lady from Nigeria, and it was funny because she put Jeff Bezos in his place. Now he was there pitching like $10 billion to save the planet, and she had just one line to say: "This is a man-made problem, and women are going to solve it." And he didn't know what to say, but there is a big movement out there, not just in fashion, but Mother Nature. We always associated nature as a female. You know, Mary Robinson's an incredible Irish figure, one of the head of the elders, this organization now of the older generation of leaders that have moved on, that are trying to create an influence around the world for us to see, you know, our everyday actions, no matter how small, do have an impact. And that by making small changes in our lives, that we can be consciously improve nature for everybody. Like, the thing that most people forget is that we're just 21 elements. We come from nature the same way as the trees and the ocean and all that, right? And I say this to people about wellness even. How good does it feel just to sit on a beach for the day, or go for a walk in a forest, or, you know, just be in nature? Like,
without headphones, without your phone.
Without the technology,
just
right?
Walking.
You know, we build concrete palaces, and they're incredible. Like these cities that we built, they're all concrete. But at the same time, a day in the countryside can do so much. But why? Because we're with ourselves. And so that's just the message that we give, that they're trying to bring back. And the idea, I think, you know, sustainability now it's become this political football. I mean, especially in America, right? At the moment, this whole thing that's going to come back. But it's the same. Like, I talk to people about it. It's going to involve sacrifice, because you're going to have to give up things. So one of the reasons I moved to Monaco was because I wanted life without a car. So I remember sitting down and making a list of things that I wanted in my life. And before, my old life, so I grew up in the northwest of Ireland. Most business was done in Dublin. That was 4 hours away from me. So a lot of my time was spent doing that commute. Dublin for a few days, back again, Dublin. Wanted to fly anywhere, down to Dublin, stay overnight, get a plane the next day, come back. The same when I lived in Abu Dhabi for a while. It was a commute. And I just got tired of the car thing. And one of the things that I love about living here is that at 7 a.m. I'm up and I go for a walk. It's 5 kilometers just around Port Hercule, up around Place de Milan, back up. I live up in Belgique. And it's just so nice and peaceful. You see the sun coming up, and then in the night I do the same route again. And it's that, or some days I stop and I go into COVID for breakfast. That's always good. Right?
Can't beat that.
Or I just sit on the beach and listen to a meditation for 15 minutes. And like, it's just being in that beach. I went for a swim last week and I was the only person on the beach. That is so powerful, just being with nature. And so it's just protecting that in some way.
But I have so many questions here, but let's go back for a second, because I do have a question for someone who's shy. And if you're in a room with Donatella Versace and John Legend, and you're in a room with Jeff Bezos, are you talking to them? Are they interested in you? As soon as you start speaking about junk couture, are they like, what?
Some are, some aren't. But this is a line that I got when I was at school. I said I was good at maths. A thing that I wasn't good at, there were so many things I wasn't good at, but there was one. I remember being 13. I was awful at English, right? Awful, and couldn't write stories, right? Just couldn't. Everything was fanciful and just didn't make sense. And I remember the second year at school, and for the next 4 years, I had the same English teacher. He became a real hero for me.
Oh,
This guy became a real hero for me because he saw that I had some kind of storytelling ability. I just couldn't get it down the page. But I remember things that he used to say, because I've written him a letter since saying, you know, this has been one of the quotes of my life. And he used to say this all the time: drama is life with the boring bits taken out.
drama is
Life with the boring bits taken out. So when I tell a story, I know how to get to the drama. So it's the same, right? So I'll give an example. I was in Cannes last week, standing in the Marriott, and various celebrities are coming in and out, but an Irish film director came in. So I knew he was Irish, Jim Sheridan. He's won Oscars and different things, my left foot and different. And so he's walking along. He's his wife and daughter. And I'd over and said, how are you doing? And I said, God, you know, but like myself, you'd be allergic to that sun, because he was bright red, right? Out in the sun. That's all Irish people are, you know, Jim, right? Like, I knew him and I don't, right? And so he says, oh, yeah, it's terrible warm, isn't it? Terrible warm. And, are you in the movie business yourself? And I said, no, I'm not. I'm in a form of entertainment. And he said, oh, what's that? And then I just said, I invented a sport. And then I just be quiet. And I leave the drama to them. And then I say, because the same thing happens. I say, God, I get the same reaction, when I say that. Everybody just looks at me like, the F did you invent the sport?
Yeah.
And
because you have a description like that, and I have no idea what you're talking about. I said,
nobody does, right? Or I love getting into a taxi. And then they're chatting away for 10, I love chatting to taxi drivers. And then 10 or 15 minutes in, then they go, and so what do you do yourself? And I just go, I invented a sport. And then I be quiet. Because their mind then goes into, what the hell could that be? Is it with the football? Is it with the rugby ball? Is it with the golf ball? Everything's with the ball. Right?
How do people react to that?
And, well, they don't know what they say, right?
Yeah.
And then I say, but I need to tell you a story to explain it. Because I love telling stories. And then so I say, right, so as a kid, I was awful at sport. I was, Nancy. I was terrible, right? I was that kid.
Did you want to be good at sport?
I did.
Okay.
So, and actually, I went to see the Robbie Williams movie there recently, and the first scene starts with him being awful at football, right? And it just reminded me so much of me. So, where I grew up, sports was the avenue to cool. Mm-hmm. And like as a teenage boy, what was the thing? You wanted girls, and you couldn't get them unless you were cool, right? So instead, I was the weird gay kid, because if you couldn't kick a ball, you were gay and you were weird, and that was it. And so I would have come home from school every day, and I had to kick that ball so hard against 5 hours later, my dad would try to get me in, and he couldn't understand why. Because it just couldn't, it wasn't physically in me. Plus, I don't have any aggressive nature. Because I've a PT here, and he's trying to get me to box, and he's like, actually, you can hit me, right? I just don't have that aggression. So, and I never understood that, and I actually thought that was weakness. I thought all of that stuff was weakness, right? I thought, I looked at all those other kids, and I was like, how do they do it? And they're so confident on the pitch. And so when I looked at all of that as I grew older, what do sports do for young people? So the number one thing is you're a member of a tribe. Number two, you're celebrated for your skills and talent. So, and you're coached. And what's coaching? Coaching is somebody seeing something in you and bringing that out and pushing you to get better. So it's validation. All those things are confidence and their validation. The experience for me was the opposite. I was just rejected every day. And no matter how hard I worked at it, it's just more rejection. Peer rejection. Could never make a team. No good. Just constantly the weird gay kid, right? And I remember...
Did you get bullied because of that?
A lot of that, right? And then, so it came to college time. I mean, I got accepted to the best college in Ireland, but I didn't want to go. Like 2 weeks before it, I just said to my dad, I don't want to go. And he said, but why not? And I said, Dad, you can't afford it. And I used that excuse. And he said, oh, we'll sacrifice, we'll find, he was a working class man, we'll find the way. And I was like, no. I said, I'm good with accountancy. I have an opportunity to take a job with a local accountancy firm. I'll do the exams that way. It's the same thing. I don't need the college thing, and I'll earn money. And he goes, as long as you have a plan, I'm good with that. So I didn't go to college, right? And I didn't go to college specifically because I was tired of being the gay, weird kid and just having that. And I tell this story to people is because it's a bit longer, and I don't know to go into it or not, but when I actually finished school in Ireland, I was unsure about the college thing for a year. So you could defer. And then we live right on the border with Northern Ireland. So in Northern Ireland, they had the A-level system. So I went in there and I did A-levels for a year just to see how I get on. And I picked the subjects were all math-based. So physics and accountancy, and it was fine. I was fine. But one episode in there just made my mind up that college wasn't for me. And that was, so completely new school, new people. They didn't know me. I could reinvent myself a little bit, right? But one day I remember this kid, and Eamon McCann was his name, right? He came from Strabane. And I remember coming down, you had to walk up a slight hill into school, and I'm coming down the hill and I'm saying to me, I will not go to school today. Let's just skip school. We'll go play snooker. And I no, I'm not going to play snooker. I've got maths now. I'm going to maths class. No. Let's go play snooker, man. Let's just do something, different. Just break out for a while. And I was like, no, I'm going to school. But he just didn't want me to walk into the hallway. Because when I walked into the hallway, it was painted on the roof, Troy Armour is gay. And so I was there going, why is this following me around?
How old were you?
I was 17 and a half at that point. 17 coming 18. So I was like, why is this following me around? And it was just, number one, I like colour. I like the crazy shoes, right? I wouldn't be aggressive. So I'd say, if they're feminine in nature, right? And as such. And that, I saw all that as weakness, right? I was not good at sports. I liked my studies because I was good at it, right? But that then was the end of school for me. I was like, I'm not going back. I'm not going. Now, what I know now is that if I went to college, it would be probably a different environment. But none of my family had ever been to college before, so they couldn't tell me that. And so for me, Nancy, it was just, that's not for me. I'm going a different route.
Yeah, but you never forget that. You never forget walking into that hallway.
No, I never forget it, ever. And I didn't tell people that until recently.
You know, my husband was bullied as a kid, and I just recently learned this, that the boys used to spit on him.
Yeah.
And he used to try to hide. Like it was a Catholic school, and at lunch he would go to like this little church and try to hide, but they always found him. And for years they would spit on the back of his head.
Well, I never had the spitting one, but
it's the psychological
correct.
damage that just stays with you forever.
So this is the truth of that now. So
wow,
I was 50 2 weeks ago, and it was 47 before I stood in front of a group of people and spoke.
47.
I couldn't stand in front of people and speak, and I had 40 people at one point working, like at different companies, right? And it's the same. I remember one of the companies of 40 people, and I couldn't stand in front of them and speak to them, even though I hired them all. I would talk to them through email. I couldn't. Completely had no self-worth at all. I believed that I was worth zero. But I never defined it as that. It took a while for me to figure out that all of that stuff had its toll on me. So what happened was I created a persona that was a success of a persona. So I had business, I was doing all these things, I had a big fancy car, a big fancy house, all that stuff.
The external stuff that
all
shows you're a success.
Trophies, right? So all those kind of things. And it was around, also people will see the successful Troy, right? But the successful Troy still couldn't speak to people. So, you introduced me there, and one of the things was around Junk Kouture. And Junk Kouture is 15 years old now, but for the first 12 years of it, maybe into 13, I never did an interview. I avoided all interviews.
For the first 12 years?
Because you know why?
No.
Because the minute somebody asked me a question, I went quiet. The opposite of what you experience, So, because, I remember I was at this U2 event.
Sorry, you're telling me the man that's sitting here in front of me telling all these amazing stories, if this was 10 years ago, you would have just been silent.
I wouldn't be here.
You wouldn't have even come.
Wouldn't have come. Would have said no. And so I avoided all interviews. And I remember a couple of times people put a mic in my face with a camera. They talked to me first, right? I remember Brexit was on, and we were on the border at businesses across both sides, and this TV crew just arrived at the premises that we were in. We're in one of these incubator places. So we're in floor 3. So they were working their way through the place, didn't know they were there, and then they appeared in our place. And so I had a great chat with this guy for 10 minutes, right? Just chatting away. And then he goes, we need to get this on camera. And the minute that camera went on, silence. I didn't know what to say. And it used to be even psychological that I would meet everybody for a coffee or lunch sitting down, and I could meet and I could chat to you across the table, great. But if you ever asked me to stand up, even in a room, and so that's
a pretty heavy weight to carry.
Yeah, right.
All those years.
But you get brilliant at hiding it.
Well, you must.
You get brilliant at hiding it.
But you're still cohabitating with these two personalities that you are.
Right. So what happened then was, it's 10 years ago now, I found this organization called Entrepreneurs Organization.
Okay, I was going to ask you about that.
Right.
Yep.
And so 17,000 members worldwide. Didn't know very much about it, but one of the
you
things,
founded it, sorry, by yourself?
No, I found it, so it wasn't founded by me.
Okay, sorry.
So I found it, right? So I found it online, and an entrepreneur that I admired was always posting about this thing. So I was like, I'm going to go see what this is about, right? And it said on it by invite only, and I was like, sure, they're never going to invite me. But anyway, I'll go see somebody, right? So I went to meet this guy, and he was completely mad, I have to say, right? Aidan Corcoran, if you're listening, you are completely mad, right? But he turned around to me and he goes, Jesus, you're one of us. You're as mad as I am. And I never saw that, right? But over 2 hours at an airport hotel, we had this great conversation. And he goes to me, you're a perfect fit for what we do. And so I thought it was like a business network. And I remember turning up the first day, and it wasn't. The thing that entrepreneurs share, right, that is that somewhere in their lives There's some trauma somewhere that's driving them on.
What?
This is the thing, right? And I can go in. We could talk for 2 hours about this now.
No,
right?
no. Now you got me. Go. I got to hear this.
So this is the thing. And this, because to extend it away on out, right? So it started out the first day get in there. I remember getting 4 men in a room to do this thing called forum. And we're the 4 newbies. So we're doing training. And the next thing, this guy gets up and I'm like, so we're going to learn networking and business, how to do this and raise money and better taxation policies and whatever. And so the guy starts talking about feelings. And I'm looking around going, 4 Irishmen in the room. There must be a bottle of whiskey here somewhere. Because none of these lads are going to talk about feelings unless they're drunk. Right? So he keeps talking about feelings. 2 of the boys leave. That's true. They never came back. But 2 stuck it out. Me and this guy, Mihal Carl, became a really good friend of mine. We were both very similar kind of natures, very shy and had tough teenage years. And so what I learned in EO was that the value I could get from other entrepreneurs was hearing the stories of the roads they walked with issues that they had, how they handled their emotions, how they handled trauma, how they handled different things like this. So that went on, and then that extended to, in 2018, one of them saying to me, there's a master's program at MIT that EO run. You should apply for that. And I remember filling out the application form, going, I'm never going to get into this. And the last bit was you had to create a video, 3 minutes long, of why you should be in the program. That video took me a week because I couldn't speak. I couldn't speak to a video, right? It was awful. Nancy, it was awful. 5 minutes to go, the video was done and just sent because I was like, whatever I've got, I have to send now, right? Because that was the place I was in. And I remember getting accepted, going, this is fantastic. And I went there, and the first day, our first semester, I sat in the back of the room. I was like, I don't belong here. These guys are all phenomenal. And this is what I want to say about the trauma thing then. So they do a thing in MIT. It's one of the first nights called the Night of the Living Dead. They get all these, there's 6 to 8 entrepreneurs in this master's every year. Get them all into a room, lights out, and then there's this spotlight on you at the front, and you get a turn each. So they get you up, Nancy.
No.
And they put the light on you.
You're terrified at this point.
I'm shaking. I'm like, what the hell do I say here? Like, right? Why? So apparently in my thing, I said, I have 4 companies at this point, but Junk Kouture was the one. I couldn't tell you why, but it was the one that was calling me. And I wanted rid of the others, but I wanted to do this, but I couldn't tell you why. So his whole thing was, so why Junk Kouture? And I'm happy with that question. It's a safe place. I'm like, I love creativity, I love fashion. It's great. Why? Oh, working with kids is great. The energy and, the fashion and the creativity. Why? And he just kept saying, why, Nancy?
That's it? Just why?
And I don't remember if that was 8 or 9 times. But you have all these eyes looking at you, right? And I remember I started to cry after the 8th or 9th time. Like, I just started to cry. And that was what he was trying to do. He's trying to push through all the crap that I was going to give him. All the crap that I give myself to tell me the reason why I do things. And in just this moment, and I didn't know where this answer was going to come out. In that moment, I just said, because every one of those kids is me. And then he just said, now you know why you're going to go through that wall to make this happen. And it was the same for every one of them.
But you had never thought that. It had never come into your mind before that moment.
Ever, because I wouldn't admit that I was one of those kids. There was no way. I was the successful businessman. I wasn't the weird kid anymore. I wasn't the weird kid. I've left him behind. He's gone. I've forgotten about him. Mm-hmm. He's living inside me, but I forgot about him. I'm now successful Troy, who's an entrepreneur with 4 companies and doing all these things. And
at MIT.
Right?
Yeah.
And you have all the labels and you have all the things, right? And there's no way, no chance in hell that I was going to tell somebody that I was anyway connected into those kids. And so that was the first step out. The second step out came through EO as well. And what happened was I eventually, you become a member of this forum. So I was a member of this forum in Ireland. There was me and the guy who was there that first day, and eventually others were added to. Altogether 70 members in Ireland, but in our forum was 7 people. And it was my turn to lead that forum. So you get a leader every year. I was in it now 6 or 7 years in the thing. So it was my turn to lead it. And it was a struggle because they're all leaders. and they all have their own opinions, right? And they're all used to in their own businesses being number one. So to come into a room where they have to listen to somebody else is very difficult. So that was a challenge. It's a challenge for the leader too, to figure out how do I lead these 6 people other than me in a path that they don't want to go. So I spoke to somebody else, and as I'm struggling here with this, Irish Forum, number one is they don't like talking about feelings, which is what it's about. And so every month this just became business advice. So we've actually left the whole emotions, that we don't even come up anymore. And I saw the real value of that because I already started MIT. So I said, I want to try and bring that back in. Give me, how do I do it? And this guy gave me this simple exercise. He said, try this. And this exercise I thought was going to be for them, but it actually was life-changing for me. So it was simple. So we went to our forum, and our forum, you normally update, their month, basic things, whatever. And then the last 2 hours were about these emotional things. And this time I said, guys, we're not going to do that. We're not going to talk about business advice this week. We're going to do this little exercise. So put all the chairs around a semicircle. And I said, I want you to close your eyes. And I want you to imagine it's 11:30 p.m. in your home. Everybody's gone to sleep, except you. You're just sitting watching TV. There's nothing on, but you do not want to go to bed because something's bothering you from today. And you know that this is going to keep you awake all night. I want you to take a few minutes and put yourself in that place. And then I want you to write down the 3 things that keep you awake at night in that way. What are the 3 things? And so whenever that was done, asked them then to think hard on those 3 things and circle the one that they thought was the strongest one. I went around the room and asked them. So then I said to each one of them, okay, next week, so now whatever yours is, you're talking about that next week. We're going to do an analysis on why that keeps you awake. Next one, right, whatever. So that was fine. I never thought about mine because I was doing it for them. So I put mine in my back pocket. So that's okay. I go home, everything's fine, change my jeans the next day, empty my pockets, and I go, oh, this card, oh, this is from yesterday. And I'm reading the 3 things. And the first thing said, I hate to lose. And what I meant by that wasn't, it's not losing in a game that I can cope with. It's if I trust somebody, I'm a natural truster of people, and they let me down, right? I walk into things, right? It's just been a thing, right? Yeah. And so that drives me insane. Then I thought, how am I so stupid? I did that again. Like, I need to be sharper on this kind of stuff. And then number 2 was then I go into kind of some revenge mode, right? And I eat myself up about it. But then it was number 3 that stood out to me. And number 3 said, I have no self-worth. I was like, why did I write that down? Where did that come from?
Came from the first 2 points.
Right? Yeah, right. So that was okay. And then it's funny, right? Because I was like, how do you solve that? And I'm lucky in a way because that is my natural instinct. How do I solve things? And so this was the problem. I'd written it down. I'm going to see, how do I solve this? And then randomly, in Instagram, this thing came up, a person that you know, right? And I remember, God, I took her on a date like 30 years ago or somewhere to some concert, and she went off with a French dude, right? I took her to a Rob Williams concert. And so I was going, whatever happened to her? And I'm reading about it. And I was like, God, she helps people with emotional problems and does therapies and all.
Come on.
Telling you, right? I was like, should have phoned her up. And I was like, nah, I can't phone her up. She'll think it's creepy. 20 years later, you're back, right? Yeah. I'm not going to phone her up. So that's okay. So 2 weeks pass, and here's again, person you know. And I was like, right then, you know what? I'm going to phone her up, right? Now, this is true. This is how irrational this had all become. I got into the car. I drove 1 hour into the middle of a forest so that nobody would see me making this call.
What?
This is true, right? Into a forest. I park off. I drive down a dirt road. So you have this
planned in advance.
Well,
you know what you're going to do.
Yeah. One day, just get up and I go, I'm going to phone this person, but nobody can know I'm phoning this person to talk about this thing that I'm going to talk about. Because I had buried this so deep in me. Right?
Okay.
This is true. And it's irrational. It's completely irrational. I didn't sit down and go, must do all these steps. So I found a dirt road and into the middle of this forest. I'm sitting there and I have a bright orange sports car, right? It's sitting in the middle of a forest.
You don't want anyone to see
right?
you.
Exactly, right? Jesus. So I'm sitting in the middle of this forest and the cold sweat is coming off me. And her name's Orla, right? And I'm going to go, right, I'm going to phone Orla. And I'm dialing the number and I'm telling you, I dry mouth the whole lot. And I ring her up and I said, hello, Orla, how's it going? And I explained, what I am. And I said, I have a love-hate relationship from where I come from. I love talking and telling people I love the place and all the rest of it, but that place killed me. And it's still with me all these years, right? And I can't get over it. Is that something you could help me with? And so immediately she said, of course it is. And I said, you sure? And she said, yes. And she says, people ring me with things like this all the time. I'm like, okay. So she said, can you call down? She said, I have a little office on the side of my house. And I was going, I can't call to your house because my car's orange. Everybody's going to know I'm in there. Everybody's going to know he's in there, you know. And she goes, stop freaking out, right? Stop that. You can park around the back. So I'm down and I park around the back. This is true. I'm down to this lady's house, into her office. And she talked to me for about 2 hours, Nancy, right? Just listening to different things, which I just thought was a general conversation. And if this didn't happen to me, I would say, this is mumbo jumbo. Mumbo jumbo, right? So she said to me then, she's got like a psychiatric's couch or whatever, like the couch, a long couch. She said, right, why don't you lie down on that couch? So I lie down, and then she said, I'm going to get you to say something out loud. And when you say it, I want you to tell me where you feel it in your body. So I'm there now, I'm a completely logical person, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm there going, what the hell am I going to say to this? what am I going to say? Like, I mean, I'm going to feel it in my toes, you know? Yeah. Feel it in my fingers, right? You know, what am I going to say, right? I was like, but sure, I'll just go. I have to go with it here. Now I'm here, right? I'm lying there, and you feel exposed. You know, lying on a cut, you feel exposed. Like at the end of the day. So, and she's sitting on a chair over there, and she says, "The sentence I want you to say is, it's okay to be alone." So I go and say, "It's okay to be." My throat's on fire. I can't.
Stop.
I'm telling. I couldn't say the word alone. And then she said, I've listened to you for 2 hours. You've been alone all your life. You felt alone. You don't have a friend. I said, I don't have a friend. She says, even in your family, you feel different. You feel like you don't fit. And you're hiding that from everybody. So we're going to stay here today until you can say it's okay to be alone and not feel pain in your body. And it took 40 minutes. And she sent me home and she said, you're going to feel like you're in a car wreck today. And I was like, is that like, I said to you, I'm a logical person. If this didn't happen to me, I would say, this is not true. And I went home. I didn't tell anybody anything about this, right? This is like the most embarrassing thing ever happened to me. I was like, this cannot happen. And I went to bed. And the next morning I got up and I called my PR company. I said, I want to do an interview. She's like, are you okay? Because she'd been chasing me for 12 years to do interviews. And I go, Lindsay Holmes does the PR for Junk Kouture, and she said, I'll set up a couple of interviews. So she set up newspaper, magazine, and radio. And I did the newspaper one, and I had so much fun. And I did the magazine one, and I had so much fun. And then I did the radio one. And then that was the one that then I got this outpouring from people. Because I went on that and said, my biggest weakness was my biggest strength. I just didn't see it. Because I got some confidence from doing the first two. And I said, I was a feminine boy. Like I like handbags. I like shoes. I like buying shoes for women, right? I'm great at dressing people. I love that stuff. And but I never told people that. I hid it all. And I hid all the fact that I was the weird gay kid. And even though I'm not gay, but everybody, you know, in Ireland, there was nowhere to search what that was. You just became a tag that was attached to you.
It was also that generation.
It was that generation, right? And the outpouring from people, you know, online, people finding my phone number. One guy in his 60s called me and said, his tears, he says, I'm crying here. He goes, how do you have so much strength to go on radio and say that? He goes, I was that kid too. I would never be able to say that to anybody, never mind go on radio and do it. And so it was that moment where I realized, you know, the thing that I had been hiding for so long was the thing that was my strongest thing. And that lady changed my life in 2 hours. She unlocked all that years of hiding away trophies. And that's like me saying to her, come here. One of the things I didn't want the car anymore because the car was a trophy for me. So I don't need one. You know, and I just meet people now as I am. And it's the same, all this stuff. I've got really interested in this kind of thing, you see. We did an exercise where they ground you into the ground, right? So you take off your shoes and you're standing there grounded. And the lady asked us to think and imagine what in nature would represent us. What would we feel represents us? And she gave the example. She says, I always see myself as a tree. I'm well rooted and my branches reach out to people. That's sort of the example she gave. And I'm standing at the same. I'm going, what the hell am I going to answer to this? And the answer that came to me that day was, I am the sun. And it's funny the way things line up for you, because I turn up as the sun. That's just, I'm pure energy. That's what I do. And the people I meet, that's the way I react to them, right? That's what they get. That can be tough, right? Because you're on all the time.
Yeah.
But it's funny then, I was at Climate Week last year and I met this lady randomly, and I just start talking, right? And she tells me that she is one of the leading professors in the world about the Mayan culture. And so we get chatting about the Mayan. And I said, one of the things that would really interest me about that is, what was life without the technology? What was life without the spin, right? All the spin of politics, all that stuff. What was just ordinary life with nature? Because as an Irish person growing up, one of the things I was very in tune with was that, the Feast of Halloween was a different feast to what it is now. Ireland invented Halloween, and Halloween was the feast of nature. It was the celebration of our bounty of, the fruit and vegetables at Halloween. And we worship nature. Now, we worship now different kinds of gods, but at that time we worship nature. So I was talking to this lady about this, and we're getting into this conversation, and I really enjoyed the conversation. And I said, I would love to know more about Mayan culture. So she started talking about then, well, why don't I do your birth map?
Oh, geez.
Right? From the Mayan culture. She says, I've studied all this stuff. I'm the number one in their language and all that. Give me the time you were born and all this kind of stuff. And so she gets out this thing, and we're working on this iPad and whatever. And the line that came out was, you turn up as your strongest self when you turn up as the midday sun. Oh, and I was going, like, how do these things all keep appearing? But that's the journey over the last 3 to 5 years has brought me to a place now where I love getting up talking in front of people. I have left that all behind. That thing of that I'm not worthy to speak. If I get up to talk to somebody, they're going to go, well, that's the weird kid. Who put him up there? Get him back down quick. Get him back down before people realize we're actually celebrating the weird kid. And so that all ties with what Junk Kouture is about. Because we haven't mentioned that really yet. But
I want to talk about that, yeah.
But Junk Kouture was kind of born then out of this idea that two things really. That thing as a kid, I was terrible at sport. There was no sport for kids that were creative. And number two was growing up in rural Ireland. One of the things I would say about it was there was no money, so we made everything. Everything was remade, and clothes were redone, and you would have shared your cousin's clothes, and you would add things on and different things like that. And that idea went away as we became more affluent. So it was kind of just bringing that back into people's lives because it was fun. Junk Kouture started for me really to celebrate creativity. It wasn't about the sustainability part. I was naturally sustainable lives. That's what we lived in rural Ireland at the time. The word sustainability didn't exist because it didn't need to, right? We were just naturally that way inclined. And we would have thought first about fix and repair and make versus buy. Buy was not the thing we would do.
I was surprised that it was created in 2010 because I know it was in Monaco last year. I thought it was new and it was really riding sustainability, but so this is interesting.
So it wasn't. And then you see the struggle in the team have then it's because obviously sustainability is so cool now and we have to go into that, and then it's a struggle for me to go up and talk about that because I still have to be my authentic self. And for me, Junk Kouture became about the celebration of creativity. That was what it was about. Because if I went back to that time at school, I was really good at maths, but I was really good at art too.
Okay.
Right? And then the storytelling. Like when that teacher got a hold of me, I started winning essay competitions and I wrote a play and all, and it was put on off Broadway when I was 16. Like, so I've written a novel, I've written a lot of different things. I've written a whole collection of stories, and I love writing because he tuned me into writing the way I talked as opposed to getting into this dream again of trying to invent something. But what they brought my parents down to the school and they said, look, there's no money in that. There's no money in that art part, right? There's money in the accounts part. So he needs to give that up and he needs to do the accounts part. But I was completely bored. No, I'm an accountant, right? I don't tell people that. But I'm an accountant. I did the accountancy thing, right? And I was bored. Bored, right? But I'm good at it. But I just, and I have to knuckle down when I want to do it. But it's just a change of mindset. But creativity for me was never valued. So that was the thing. Junk Kouture started out going, how do we celebrate creativity for young people?
I just have to say, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I feel exactly the same way when I look now at the opportunities for young people to be creatives, and it's its own entire universe. Growing up and being creative, there was no value. And your family was always saying, you're never going to make money doing that. So don't.
Lawyers, accountants,
You have
doctors,
exactly.
engineers.
You
Right?
have to work and support yourself. So hide the creativity. And it's impossible.
It's so difficult, right? And so what happened, and then this is the thing, the creativity's knocked out of us bit by bit by bit by bit, right? You know, little bits are taken off your confidence, and then you're afraid to say things. And then art's seen as it's a playful thing that people do, and artists are just wastes of, you know, they just flow through life, and they don't become rich till they're dead, right? You know, somebody else gets around this kind of thing, and everything was about wealth and wealth and wealth, and so that was the initial thing, was how could I show the value of creativity? And I used to use some examples, and I remember it was the same, because I mean it's very relevant in Monaco, like Fiat. You know, Fiat 500s, right? Like nobody ever stands in front of a Fiat 500. You don't go along and see them in the street and 10 people taking photos of them. But the Fiat company make the Ferraris as well, right? And it's just a different design concept, and everybody's taking pictures of them. And it's like the value of the creativity in creating that image or that car or whatever is a wow factor. And it's the same, you know, as an Irish person, a big U2 fan growing up, and you know, people would Bono would be, he's a love-hate kind of figure, but I would say to people, like, sit down and write a song that 1 million people will listen to. It's not easy. Like, and the value in that, the value of, I'm going to say something else in a minute, but really, the value of creating something from zero, right? From zero is huge. And because I ask people this question, right? Let me see if you get the answer that I have, right? It's like, what was the first profession? And your face changes, right? Because most people go to a certain thing. And then I say, well, it wasn't that, right? Because the first line in the Bible is God created. So it was a creator, right? Ultimately, the first profession was a creator. And it's the one that you take zero, something that's an idea, a flash in your head, and go, actually, I can make something from that.
So how did you take Junk Kouture in 2010 and get the financial backing you need, or get sponsors, partners? How did you get people on board?
Oh, this is going to be fun now, right? so it was the fourth company at the time. It was a hobby. I didn't see it as a company. It was a hobby. And so there was a debate going on at home about this silly idea that he's got now and what's happening here. And so a plan was hatched, because I had to find a solution, because my family were really involved in my life and was like, not doing this. And so I said, okay, I'll put 1,000 quid in the bank account, and when the 1,000 quid's gone, it's over.
Really?
So I built Junk Kouture with 1,000 quid.
Okay, so that would be about at the time, I don't know, it'd be about €1,000.
Still the same, $1,000, right? So, and the way I explain that to people is, so I talk to young company startups now, right? And they say, like, so the thing is this: you can solve problems two ways. You can have money and spend money at it, or you have to innovate if you don't have money. So when I look back at the start, right, so you put 1,000 quid in the bank account, the first thing that happened was, in Ireland, there was 967 high schools. So I had enough for one stamp for each one. Each stamp was €1. So I was like, I can afford 967 stamps. I need to write a letter to the principals of these schools to outline the plan of this and hook enough of them in the first go, because I don't have a second chance. And so that first go, I hooked 194.
Wow.
And so then I had a problem, because I got no money left, and I had to put on 4 events, because it was events. So basically I had to put on 4 events and then a final ultimate. This was all coming bit by bit. This was not laid out at the start. It was like, I'll write the letter, see what happens, deal with that problem then. So I remember going to meet this events production company, and not all the ideas were mine. Like, he had a great idea, because I went to him, and the first thing my line, Nancy, was this: I've got no money, but I need. I've got no money, but I need. And I remember going to him going, I've got no money, but I need to put on 4 events around Ireland, north, south, east, and west. And his first thing was, you know what, you should do those in hotels on a Sunday evening, because nobody rents those ballrooms on a Sunday evening, because people are working the next day. Hotels will love that. They'll give you the room basically for free if you're selling even drinks in the bar, whatever. And it was true. I got the 4 hotels for free.
Wow.
And the next thing then was, I said to him, but I need you to do these shows for free, right? And the staging and the lights and everything. And he goes, well, no. He said, let's get this right. Now, you're going to need at least 30 grand, right? I said, I don't have 30 grand. I've got nothing. And so I'm doing the math in my head going, if I sold, 150 tickets to the show at a €10 each. You could possibly give this guy $6,000, right? 4 shows. So I said to him, $6,000. He says, you're not listening to me. It's 30 grand, man. Eventually we settled on 9 grand. We shook hands and he said, it's just so mad. I have to do it. But the deal is, when I'm packing up that night, you're paying me going out the door. And I says, I'll sell enough. So I had to sell whatever, 2,200 tickets to get enough money to pay him going out the door. So I was like, right, let's do that. And I remember, Nancy, going to the first show, and there was 400 or 500 people in the room. And I didn't know why at the time. But like I know now, it's because those kids who were on stage were never on stage before. They were never on the sports field. They never had their own thing. So their mammies, their grannies, their aunts, they were all coming out. Their friends, they were all coming to see them, and the energy in the room was just electric. It was magic. It was like you bottled this lightning in a room, and and I to be honest, didn't know. I didn't have all the answers. I didn't know stage left, the stage right. I didn't have a clue about lights or any of this kind of stuff, but I knew there was something happening. And I remember then was the 5th or 6th show, because we're into year 2. The 5th or 6th show, and that particular night there was 450 or something in the room, but there was only 200 that paid because there was too many doors. I was doing all this, manning the doors myself and different things, free labor, and I got really kind of disenchanted with people because I was like, I would never go in for free. Like, Jesus, €10, But that night again changed my life, because this is a thing that I've done, and that is I've reached out to people that I don't know, and so I guessed the email address of the lady who produced Riverdance, the Irish show that's gone around the world, right? And so I just basically put in every variation of her name at riverdance.com.
I do that all the time.
With the dots and the underscores and M. Doherty, and her name is Maya Doherty. And then I watched as they all go undelivered, undelivered. And then one just said delivered, right? And I went, okay, that went to her. And then I have everything with read receipts. So like next morning, it's like, Maya Doherty read your email. It's like, oh, she's read my email now. And
what were you hoping to accomplish with that?
Really, I was big into learning, so I just wanted to learn. And that was the thing. So I wasn't looking for money or anything, because she did ask me at the start, is it investment or what? And I said, no, I just want to learn. I want to learn. I want advice. How did you do it? You teach me. How did you do it? I'll learn from you. So she said to me, I'm on for mentoring you for a year. I'll give you 6 sessions every 2 months. I'll introduce you to my team members. So I met the guy who does all the stages. So I started learning about lights, what a stage setup should look like, all these things. And then the other thing that she did was she talked about, because she had sponsorship, and I said, well, I don't know anything about sponsorship. I have no sponsorship at the moment, but that's where I ultimately want to go. And she said, well, I'll introduce you to the guy who got me this sponsorship for a particular show that you had. And so I remember sitting in his couch in his office, and him saying, you wouldn't be here if that lady hadn't called you. Because like, I'm tiny now, like a little tiny event. So that was okay. He led me to a bank. And so a bank became my first sponsor for €25,000.
Wow. Not bad.
Yeah. And then that bank re-signed 3 years later for 1.7 million.
What?
Yes.
Okay. So let's first of all just say, in the beginning, when you wrote those letters to the school principals, what was the criteria for what did the students have to create? What was their list of inclusion? They had to have address. They had to have what? There
was very little rules at the time, but so the criteria was you had to make high-end couture fashion, so fitted one person. The maximum in a team could be 3. So you could do it on your own and model it yourself, or you could do it with 2 other designers and somebody had to model it.
Age group?
Age group was 12 to 18.
Okay.
Then you had to then write a theme about the dress, which I can go into in a minute, right? And also then you had to upload. At that point in time, we didn't have any upload. There was no website. You had to post it to. You had to put like on a CD, a song, 1 minute of music that would be played on stage, and you had to then choreograph your own time on stage to go with that music.
Okay.
So the way then the show would run, all these entries come in, we would pick 60 for an event. So some wouldn't make the cut, 60 for an event. And what would happen is, I'll give you an example. So these 3 girls made a dress out of old ties. And the thing was called All Tied Up. So there's a host of the show. He goes, right? So, and we have Caitlin, Mary, and Martha. And their dress is called All Tied Up. And they've used old ties. And old ties for them are the symbol of male domination over female. Take it away, all tied up. And so then their music would come on, whatever music they'd put together. And so these 3 girls had jammed a couple of pieces of music together. So the first beat comes on and is very dramatic. 25, 30 seconds of this dramatic music, and your woman's going across the stage, all drama. And then she kind of just collapses, and it's like this DJ does a big scratch, and the music stops. And she stands up, and she had all the ties velcroed. So she ripped the ties open, and underneath she had this dress made out of Vogue covers.
Oh, wow.
And Madonna Vogue starts to play on the, and she goes hammering down the catwalk, and the place goes absolutely nuts, right? And the thing is, it's been able to tell a story in a minute. You know, she's got in there female emancipation. You know, ties are the symbol of male domination. Breaking free from the tie. You know, it's the energy that all creates, and there's loads of them. Like there's 100,000 kids have been through this now, right? But the story of in Ireland, you know, it was 1.7 million, and then it started to grow rapidly, right? It became this thing, and I still was not using the word sport. People were saying to me, "God, it's a great hobby you've got," because it was a hobby for me. It was a hobby. Now there are people working in it and all this kind of stuff, and but it was addictive. So you know, schools were coming back for more. One kid entered this year. He did really well, or she did really well. Next year, 20 kids from the same school was entering, right? 30. And I remember too this because everything was guerrilla marketing. Right? That's kind of one of the things I do, right? So I had, I remember I used to give money to charity. It was a children's charity in the UK. And because of that, it was connected to the Palace. I used to get 2 tickets every year to a royal film premiere that would be on. They picked a movie. It was a royal film premiere. Prince Charles or the Queen would turn up at that and so on. And all the movie stars were on the red carpet. And so the second year of Junk Kouture, I had the 2 tickets. It was Hugo was the movie. And I said, you know what? I don't want to go. What would happen if I sent 2 of the girls and not tell them that they're just there to be like in the back of the cinema, like randomers, right? So I rang up these 2 particular girls. I think the dresses really fit together. And I said to the 2 of them, you know, Junk Kouture's been invited to the royal film premiere. And you 2 have been chosen. And so the way those things work is when you go up the red carpet, it's kind of split down the middle. So on one side, goes in then to the paparazzi pit where all the celebrities get their photos. And then the normal Joe Soaps who are there because they wipe somebody's brow or whatever, they go in this side and go in the main door and they're at the back of the cinema. So I told the 2 girls is when you get to the door, you're not to go in the door. Just go into that paparazzi pit. So these 2 16-year-old girls have no clue, right? But neither have the paparazzi, you see. They don't know what's coming at them. So the 2 girls go right in there, and of course 100 light bulbs go off. And so the 2 girls get all into it. And the light bulbs keep going. And I remember the next day we were in the front of every newspaper, right? The 2 dresses were made of newspapers. It was like newspaper girls take over royal film premiere, right? And it was just, that was then the start of the same. We did Cannes. We're not invited to Cannes. We just rock in, bring out 4 or 5 kids, and the place just goes, what are these? And then when they start talking to those kids and hear the stories, you know, I took a year to make this. I remember one girl telling me, Rachel Irwin, I remember the first time I met her, and I said, Rachel, tell me about it. It's fantastic. It's a pity this is audio only, right? This dress is fantastic. And I remember, you know, tell me about this. And she said, my brother John was a year older than me. She says, I'm 16 now. He was 16 last year. And one day at school, between classes in the hallway, he just dropped dead. Sudden death syndrome. And it's destroyed my family. My father doesn't speak anymore. I don't want to be at school. And so I decided that I would make this dress to honor his memory. So everything in it is something to do with our John. I'm in tears now at this point, right? So the whole base of the skirt was a trampoline. He was big into the birds, robins. So there was feathers, and there's robins made all through feathers through it. It was just the effort in it. And her mother was there, and her father was against all. He didn't speak. He became a mute over this death, really affected him. And the mother was saying to me, you tell her she needs to get studying. She's not doing her exams. She's avoiding all that stuff. It's all about this making this dress and all. And I just said to her mother, Dan, you know what? That girl doesn't need to do exams. That girl's going to go far. And she got into college without any A-levels. They took her the next year because she started making more dresses, right? This was a thing. She had fashion designer in her somewhere. And this unlocked that. But it also took her out of grief. And this is the thing, the stories of all these kids are, I could go on. Maxim, I remember Maxim he knitted the suit out of VHS cassette. It was all about the movie industry. And he got to go to one of the Royal Film premieres. And it's striking. So everybody was asking for pictures, right? The confidence building was phenomenal, right? But he was, and then he went to Cannes with us as well, and he was interviewed by a lady from one of the local radio stations in Ireland a year later, and I was there, right? And he was on stage because he'd been interviewed by her for radio, and she said, these are things that adults will never get to be in their lifetime, and he's telling, because we did the helicopter thing into Monaco, and he's like, they picked me up in a helicopter, and and then I went into Cannes, and everybody's getting the picture, and because it was movie themed and all this, and she said, God, these are huge. Like, which one was the bigger one? Which one was the bigger one? And he paused for a minute, and he said, actually, it was none of them. The biggest thing was I found my personality. And I remember in that moment thinking, he didn't actually find his personality, because it was always there. He said other people started to recognize it. And it was validation. And so it was the power of being seen for who you are. And that's what a lot of that was about.
So how did it, because we're going to run out of time eventually, so I need to hone in here a little bit. These stories are really amazing. How did Junk Kouture go from this little event with, one bank to where it is now, where it's in several cities and traveling around the world? And where is it going?
So 2019, we'd reached kind of the peak in Ireland. It was one of the biggest shows in Ireland, won a lot of awards for different things. We got a lot of things right. And then COVID appeared and we had a break. And I saw that as a gift. I said to the team, we need to see this as a gift and let's use that gift to see what that looks like. And I said, so the first thing we did, and I remember drawing up, because people are visual. So I did a little headstone and I put Junk Kouture Ireland on that. And I says, okay, let's say that died. And let's say we're to start all over again as Junk Kouture Global. What does that look like? So rather than coming from Ireland and working the way out, let's start with, that's gone. Let's take all we learned from it though, and let's go on a global. And so then it was like, okay, for me, I always used to compare it to Formula One, because I've been coming to Monaco for 20 odd years, right? So, and I was fascinated by the business of it. And so the business of Formula One, it's the sponsorship, it's the tickets, It's the media rights, it's the licensing, it's the city deeds, all those things. So I was like, okay, I like the idea of a Formula One tour around the world. Let's program that. So let's look at all the school calendars. Let's see what we can fit in. So we wrote like Tokyo, Sydney, Mumbai, Singapore, Cape Town, Abu Dhabi, Paris, London, Milan, New York, LA. So we could do this. And every 2 weeks we could have an event. And then all those could be feeders for all the kids in those countries around. And then could we create a Super Bowl at the end of it, where we have 5 from each one of those cities get together. And I remember seeing SoFi Stadium being built, and it was like an 80,000 seater stadium with a glass roof, because some of the dresses can't be out in the rain, right? I was like, that's perfect. We could have these kids in there. It'd be like the Super Bowl of creativity. So that was the vision. I was like, well, how do we do it? And at the same time, imagine the stories of all those kids. And I was like, but the big thing is, for me, it has to be free to enter. Because I wanted kids in Mumbai to go home to mom and dad and go, I need trash and imagination. Everything else is free. I don't need golf clubs. I don't need membership of a club. I don't need football boots. I want kids in Cape Town to compete against kids in London. And so the sponsorship then became, because airline sponsoring for these kids to fly in for free. And so we had our first World Cup, or Super Bowl World Cup in Abu Dhabi.
What year was that?
That was 3 years ago now. Okay. We had our second in Monaco. We had our third in Dublin. And we're getting better at it now, Nancy. Like, because resources are stretched when you start to go from, I'm in one country and I know everything about it, to you're in others and you're going, I'm dealing with, like, for example, I didn't know that kids in Monaco have to get, the schools to get permission from the government for them just even to leave Monaco. And that's a whole thing. In Ireland, we didn't have to do that kind of stuff, right? It's just different things. You have to learn different school calendars. You have to make sure they line up. You think everybody does midterm break at the one time, and they don't. Even Monaco and France is different. Different. All those things, right? And you can't have it a midterm break because the kids will be away somewhere, or the teacher's off on a holiday, or whatever. So lining all those things up, and we're getting better at it. And the other thing then it come up against is like visas, you know. And this is the thing that we take for granted as a European, is our visa's so strong. You know, our passport can take us to almost anywhere we want to go without any other things. But like, I remember that World Cup in Abu Dhabi, I had 2 kids that couldn't go, a girl from Pakistan, a girl from Afghanistan. Just could not get it. And I remember that girl from Pakistan is the girl who 2 weeks ago, was my birthday, wrote me a letter, right? She made me promise her. This girl is unreal now, right? From Pakistan. she made me promise her that no kid would ever get left behind again. And that is tough, right? Because we did try to take this to London and we struggled, you know, and that's the thing. It's a struggle to get visas for especially sub-Saharan countries and the global south, but there's so much talent in those places.
Let's talk about that letter, because you said just a little while ago that this started off just for you as something to do on the side. It was a passion. You already had 4 businesses. But in Junk Kouture, you found your path to legacy.
Correct. I do believe that.
Can you share what this young girl from Pakistan, what she sent you, what she made? And we can't read the whole letter, but could you read a part of the letter that resonates with you, that you see yourself in those 10,000 kids?
So the story behind this was because it went to my mom. So my mom called me and she said, I got this present for your birthday.
It was sent to that address.
Sent to that address in Ireland,
okay.
right? And so I wasn't expecting any of this at all. And I said, Mom, sure, just open it. Open it and see, what's in it or whatever. And so Mom opens it and she goes, that's some kind of a tree in a frame. This is, I don't know what this is, right? Whatever. But there's no card or anything, so there's no name on it. I don't know what it is. So she's digging in and digging in. She goes in and there's candles. She goes, I don't know what this is. A strange present, right? So the thing is that she did find the letter, right? And she sent me, and she had to get my sister to send the letter, right? Because my mom's in her 70s. And my sister said, I come down and Mom's in tears reading this letter. What is it? And she says, no, I'm in tears reading the letter. But the thing is about this is I met this girl 5 years ago. She entered Junk Kouture. And it's like 100,000 kids, Nancy. So it's the same, and I know them all. I remember their names, right? And I remember their parents, right? That's me. But and every one of them is equally important, and every one of them has a story. Lundy from Zimbabwe was an immigrant, right? And what this has done for her, or people on the outsides of it even. And I meet in the street. I'm in Paris recently, and I had a meet with somebody, and I came out of this little cafe, and somebody's calling my name. And the person with me go, my God, you're famous. I'm like, no, I'm not. And it was a Junk Kouture kid, and they're like, oh, what are you doing in Paris? And can I chat to you? And so on. And like Marius is a young LGBT guy from Poland who has shown out Paris Fashion Week. And I believe like he's one of the great talents that we've discovered. But we've discovered talent in so many things. It's not just fashion. But you asked me to read this. Like I'm sorry, but I can't.
Not even a part of it?
If I start at the top, I'll read the whole thing.
Go ahead and read it. Because I do believe that this...
I'll tell you the general gist of it.
Yeah, I mean, I do believe that this letter is the completion of what we're talking about today. Because you figured out who you are. And you're helping kids be validated for who they are. And they're sharing that with you. That's coming right back to you.
It's coming right back to me. So I'll take this middle paragraph out. But so the general thing of the start of it is, it was my birthday. She decided that she couldn't buy something for my birthday. She had to make it. And so the general gist of it, she made it with old things of the old person that she was, right? But this paragraph is, in a world that often forces us into boxes, your openness and compassion has been a light. You've shown me that there is space for all of us, for our differences, our cultures, our dreams. And through platforms like Junk Kouture, you offer that same light, that same gift to so many young people. The chance to be seen and celebrated.
Can't ask for more than that.
No. That, I think, is the thing that I can give the world.
So if people wanted to see a Junk Kouture show, where is the next one? What's it going to be? How do the people see it?
So they go to junkkouture.com, and there's various shows in various different cities. We're now live in 6 cities across the world.
You coming back to Monaco at all?
I would like to come back to Monaco. We had this year schools enter here. I actually had this dream that I would make Monaco the home of Junk Kouture. I thought that a place that has such a celebration of the ocean, Prince Albert has a huge thing about the sustainability and different things, but also the thing that I really liked about Monaco, and I'll when I came here the first time 20 years ago, I found it inspirational. And one of the things that I thought that would be great for those young people you know, you're in Mumbai and you're in Monaco. Why are you in Monaco? Because you did it yourself. You didn't buy your way there. You're in the center of all of this because you took the time, the resiliency, the failure, you got over it. You kept going. You won your regional heats. You won your national heats. You are now in the Grimaldi Forum standing on a stage because you did it. And I thought it was a great place to, of inspiration. That's when I came here at the start, that's what I thought it was. It was a great place of inspiration. And so I thought there's an opportunity as things grow out. But at the moment, we're just turning around the world with that World Cup. And I would, because obviously the vision was someday SoFi Stadium, and that fits 80,000 people. And there's nowhere here that fits 80,000 people. But the World Cup that we had in Monaco, the reaction to people. So it was very much easier to get the visas and everything, right? French government helped with all that was really good. And so that's an infrastructure that you need to have. Also, the hotels were fantastic and the Grimaldi Forum was brilliant. And then they really liked as well. We liked the fact that the venue was sustainable. It was heated by the water and cooled by the water and all that. So there is an opportunity to come back here. But for now, the schools here are entering. We have the Lycée or the Lycée, I'll get my French wrong, and ISM have entered this year. And I believe both those schools have made it to the next World Cup. So they've won their regional heats. But it's for those kids, what they'll get out of that. It's a journey they'll never forget. And the thing that I say, because this is a little lesson that I tell them. So at that World Cup, we have created a lab now the day before, which is born out of my connections with MIT and EO. So one of the questions I had for MIT was, why do I have to wait till I'm in my 40s to learn this stuff, right? Why are young people leaving school with a diploma and maybe broken, right? Not the validation in a person that's not fully complete. And I was like, I would like to add this addition. Could we distill some of these learnings down and bring them to teenagers? And so it's the simple lessons. Like I talk to the kids. So, and this is the thing. It's as simple as this, right? I go to a lot of, I've been to all these shows, done 70 odd shows now. And when you go to those shows, kids come out on stage, they have a minute on stage, they do their routine, and the minute's over, straight off, as fast as they can go, right? And I see them before it, and they're shaking. They're shaking, like it's nerves. Most of them haven't been in front of thousands of people before on a stage. So, and I just said to them, what I say to them before it is, what I want you to do is I want you to do something different. There's an X at the back of that catwalk, and it's for each and every one of you. And so when it comes to that minute, when you're practicing that routine, I want you just to practice 57 seconds. Because for that last 3 seconds, I want you to stop in that X and turn around. And I want you to open your eyes. And instead of the words in your head of, God, that's great, that's over, I want you to look and say, I did this. This is my moment. And I want you to take that with you for the rest of your lives. Because that's the moment that you'll never forget. That ultimately is what I want them to take away from it.
And those are the moments that you have when you walk in the morning and you're sitting on the beach and enjoying your life.
And I've got all these kids' memories in my head and the stories and all
the gold shoes and all those things. Just to end off, just a couple of questions about Monaco, though. I mean, when did you actually move here then as a resident?
So I left Abu Dhabi in March of 23 and came for a few weeks. I stayed at the Meridian for a few weeks to see what could happen. Could we get a school? And originally we were unsure if we could get ISM, ISN, all this kind of stuff. So I moved down the road. We're in Beausoleil for a while, and then officially moved in this year to Monaco.
What do you like about Monaco? Do you spend time with the Irish community? There's a great community here. Are you kind of the guy who's just off on his own? What do you love about living here, other than you don't have to drive your car?
God, if I go back to the start, I used to say 20 years ago, I'll retire here someday. And strange too, because I don't like to leave. It's weird. Like I'm in MIT next week. I have the master's complete, but there's an alumni that we meet every year, so we have a week there, and it's almost like I don't want to leave.
Because
I feel I'm home. Do you know why that is too?
Because I'm here.
That's part of it, right? It's definitely part of it, right?
Yeah.
But there is an entrepreneurial energy here,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's the same like the community that I've met here and fell into immediately didn't look at me as some weird guy that's trying to create some mad thing, right? So because they've all been in that journey. So there's a lot of entrepreneurial people here. So there's a massive entrepreneurial spirit. And it's a bit like EO in that way. There's either people who have come to the end of their journey and exited. So they're on the other side, but have created something from zero. And I've listened to all those things of it's impossible, it's impossible, it's impossible, it's impossible. And the same as there are people here who are now in the middle of the journey, but there is a massive entrepreneurial spirit. And I feel, anywhere I go here to tell that story to anybody, I feel people looking at me and going, it can be done.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I think one of the things, and I don't want to be negative about Ireland because like it's in my blood and I really do like to celebrate Ireland. But one of the things that I would say that Irish people are weak at is that we it's a small-minded thing.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I'd have been told it's impossible. If I say, this is my ambition, is I want Junk Kouture to be in every classroom in the world. So that's 1 billion kids. If I say to people, I want to reach 1 billion kids, you go, it's impossible. And like I met somebody recently and they said that and he goes, well, I know that's impossible because I tried it and it's impossible. But that might have been impossible for him, but for whatever he was doing, but that doesn't mean it's impossible for me. But that's nobody here has ever said to me that's impossible. But I do like the community that I have fallen into here. And from the start, it was open arms. I really do feel at home.
Well, you did create a sport, and Monaco is quite sporty with all its Olympians and athletics and the prince. So, Troy Armour, thank you so much for coming on Monaco Info, the podcast. The man that's sitting in front of me, I cannot believe that you've ever been shy. Very entertaining, and I am grateful that you opened up and shared your story with listeners. Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. It was great to explore this with you today.